Hey everybody, John Ray here with Musing Wizard. Of course, we've got Carl Brockman. And what has Carl done for us today? He mined the Twitter account of the Musing Wizard and pulled out some gems that we're going to unpack and rabbit hole into. And we'll see what he felt was interesting. If you haven't been following Musing Wizard on Twitter, you can go to twitter.com/Musing Wizard. I try to post 2 or 3 times a day there, and a lot of times it's just kind of stream of consciousness stuff that is really more of a journal to myself. Like here are things that I want to remember for myself. Sometimes I'm scheduling them in the future, and so I'm writing them from a place of alignment, but maybe I read them in the future when I'm not in that place of alignment, and I'm like, oh, thank you, self, for sending me this reminder because this is really useful to me. So, in many ways, I use my Twitter account as a way to just write messages to future me. And hopefully, the people that tune into those messages have their own experience with them. And I would love to see what your experience is and how you're interpreting some of those messages, either as a reply on Twitter, now X, or in the comments here of this YouTube video. But regardless, Carl, I appreciate you going through and picking out some of your favorites, and I'm looking forward to unpacking today.
John, thanks again for having me, my friend. As always, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And last time we spoke, I really enjoyed unpacking how important it could be in terms of sharing your perspective, creating your brand online, the importance of overcoming some of those conscious and unconscious fears about what that entails. And I thought, yeah, I've been following this little cartoon wizard on Twitter for a little while, and he shares some interesting things that make my brain think. So what a great way to unpack them, I thought, today, and I'm so happy that you're a part of it. But you just alluded to something that I think would be great to touch on first, which is I think the best thing to create, whether it's for branding, for socials, or just in life, is something for yourself. I think that is
Mm.
just such an important place to start. I been a victim of this. I still am a victim of this sometimes, and I see so many people becoming a victim of this. It's that adherent focus on the outside and creating something for something else or someone else or this thing that they see. But to start with creating something for yourself, I just think holds a lot of value because if you need it or if you're doing it for yourself, then it just means, well, firstly, it's you, it's aligned to you. And then secondly, the right people will resonate. But yeah, I'd love to hear
Right.
just your thoughts on that first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the number one rule of metaphysical marketing is your vibe attracts your tribe. And so you have to be authentically communicating your vibe. Otherwise, you're going to be sending mixed vibrational messages. And so oftentimes people are trying to be more professional than they actually want to be, or they are trying to do what other influencers did or what other content creators did. And so you end up building a community that isn't right for you. I've had this happen because I've been creating content for 20 years, and I've seen the type of people that I attract when I'm trying to be too buttoned up. And you have to, whether you do it through an anonymous account or you do it through a fully doxed account with your real name, whatever you need to do to be able to authentically express who you are and how you want to show up and what you want to contribute to the world, when you can accurately articulate that for yourself, and Twitter is a X is a really interesting way to just kind of have that dialogue with yourself. And then the interesting thing about living in a sea of algorithms is that that message will proliferate itself and go find other people who resonate with it. And over time, the algorithm puts a group of people in front of you that are like-minded, like-hearted, and then it becomes this really satisfying experience of sharing your authentic self with people who resonate with that, who learn from that, who are further along in their journey and can give you advice based on where they see you're at. And so you end up attracting not only the mentors that you need, but the students that are ready to learn from you. Because no matter where you're at in your journey, there's always going to be somebody that you can learn from and somebody that you can give a hand up. And we do that by honestly and authentically expressing who we are and finding language for what we're feeling about the world around us.
Yeah, very well said. We are both Neo and Morpheus. And
Totally.
yeah. No, no, beautiful, beautiful. So, John, one that jumped out at me, and we touched on this a little bit at the end of our last chat, so I thought would start here and dive straight into this. I'm going to read it verbatim, and then we can go from there. Quote: I am in co-creation with the Father God, who has already seen to it that all the pieces are produced, assembled, and set in perfect motion. My job is to see them in their most subtle stages, appreciate them as seeds, and watch them grow, developing deeper appreciation for my Father. So, a couple of things that jump out at me straight away is the co-creation element to this, which I really resonate with currently at my own journey. The Father, I think, is something that I'd love to unpack a little bit more. And then that the pieces are already produced, assembled, and set in perfect motion. And that relates to some of the things we've already spoken about with reality transurfing, a few other metaphysical topics. But where would you like to start, John?
Yeah, well, we should probably define what father means in that context. And so for me, like it's kind of a Christian interpretation, God the Father in the Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I guess if you looked at the energetic polarities of it, there's always masculine and feminine energy makeup in any creation. Like you could argue that the greatest creation that you could have is a human being. And what is that? It requires a masculine energy and it requires feminine energy to come together to create the most epic creation that you can have, which is additional life. And so all creation is kind of a microcosm of, you know, what the universe goes through, what we go through in life to reproduce and create ourselves. And so the father energy, that masculine energy, is a more structured energy. You could even argue that it's more rule based, and where the feminine energy is more of a receiving energy. It in many ways is the believer. It's the true worshiper, the person with faith. And so in this co-creation that we have with the rule set of the universe, which you could call God, you could just call quantum physics, you can call it whatever you want, but basically there's a structure, and you probably find the structure most often in like ritual magic. So people who are engaging their mind and their energy purposefully for the intent of manifesting something in reality. In many, you know, groups, this is called ritual magic. And you know, religions all have their various rituals, and they're basically derivatives of pagan ritual magic. Well, ritual magic, that rule set that allows you to believe something is possible, and that allows you to conjure the energy, that's kind of the father energy. It's basically the template that says, yeah, of course this is possible. All you have to do is do X, Y, and Z. You have to meet my provision. It's already been provided for. You know, in the grand scheme of things, all things exist as potential, and so we just have to activate the energy of the potential. We have to collapse the quantum wave onto the potential that we actually prefer, rather than getting it randomly. So as co-creation with the Father, we are in that Son position. We're using the Holy Spirit as kind of this connector of polarities, where we are trusting that the process will take us to the right place. And so all we have to do is start running forward, and a ship in motion is easier to turn, right? And so we run forward and we follow our impulses, and the victory is already given by the Father, by the rule set, by the way that the physics of the universe works. But the way that we engage that rule set, or that highest ideal of what's possible, is that we work the system and we believe it the way that, you know, the from that place of like being the church, being the feminine energy, being the receiver, being the cradler, being the person who births it into reality by going through the gestation process, and by trusting that process. So I'll pause there, but that's kind of the unpacking of the way that polarity plays itself out as reality creation.
Yeah, yeah. A ship that is in motion is easier to turn. That really jumped out at me. And you mentioned trusting the process and that it will take us to the right place. And I think for me, that is faith, right? And it takes courage to have faith. And as you operate in the system, you understand the system. And that process, that compounding interest of that motion allows you to continue to move towards a place of co-creation, even if one doesn't feel as though they are in that place right now.
That's
And
right.
again, if I was to look back, again, you can always connect the dots in hindsight. I would be surprised if someone couldn't find a place in their life where they were a co-creator in manifesting that reality. I feel as
Yeah.
though, yeah,
Well, reality is a mirror, and so anything you're perceiving, you're lending some of your energy to that. You're creating it in many ways. Maybe you're tuning into a larger energy set, but something in you is resonating with it. Otherwise, you wouldn't perceive it. And so when we can learn to take personal responsibility just for our perceptions in that way, much less the things that we're actually actively engaging with it with our life. What we recognize is that there's a mental process, which is part of the more masculine rule set. That's part of the like the father dictation, which is if you can see it in your mind, if you can hold it there, then you begin to gravitate all things to the nodal point in reality that then manifests that thing. But what's going to happen at a more feeling based feminine level is that any sensations that are preventing you from having the energy flow through in the way that would actually allow consciousness to it's almost like your body is like a film strip, and consciousness is the light going through the film strip, and the movie that you see on the screen is going to be different based on how much baggage you have in your nervous system.
yeah, where that
And
light's
so
directed.
when you hold something vividly in your mind, and this is when you have a holographic image of the thing that you want, the very next thing that's going to start happening to you is you're going to get triggered in your body, and that's going to show up as temporary discomfort or frustrations that are showing you where you have blockages in your system that are preventing you from flowing your consciousness into the reality simulation world life. Those blockages are preventing you from having that consciousness manifest in the way that's in alignment with your vision. And so reality is giving you a gift. It's like an acupuncturist poking you with a needle right where the energy needs to move. And so part of the feminine aspect of creation is birthing that energy out of stagnation and back into flow. And you do that by feeling the feelings in your nervous system as sensation until they dissolve. And the way that it feels is like when you drink a cup of hot tea or a glass of wine, you feel that heat rush through your field. That's what it feels like when you release baggage in your nervous system. And that's how you know that you're elevating yourself into an ability to actually meet the masculine energy halfway to manifest the things that you're actively thinking about. A lot of times people put the cart before the horse, and they're thinking and doing all this visualization work, but then they're refusing to feel all the discomfort and saying, it doesn't work when the frustration comes up. Well, the frustration is showing you that it is working. It's giving you exactly what you need to clear to be the type of conscious being that can step into the larger opportunity.
And that clearing allows you to more truly see the subtle stages. And as you say in the quote, appreciate them as seeds and watch them grow. Again, our baggage, our flow or lack thereof of energy influences our perception and where that spotlight is focusing on that film reel. And I love just the articulation. Well, my job is to see, it's to perceive, it's to watch clearly and understand that, well, I reap what I sow. All of these are seeds that are growing, whether or not they're
Right.
growing in line with our vision or they're growing in other ways that we might
Right.
not
Well,
know.
and Abraham Hicks has I think it's Abraham Hicks has a quote where they're like, if a farmer goes out and plants a bunch of seeds for their crop, they're not going to go out the next day and be like, God damn it, why aren't these fruit yet? Why isn't this corn? They understand that there's a gestation process, and that process might be temporarily uncomfortable. You have to till the soil. You have to fertilize it. You have to make sure that it's properly watered. That's work. That's the like you're having to meet the creation halfway, but you don't have to do the hard part, which is manifest the fruit. That happens naturally. And so when you understand the rule set of how to bring something apart, it's really about you going 50% of the way and then being met and held the other 50%. And the other 50% is the magical part where you know, instead of you having a 70% yield on your crop, which maybe is what most farmers get, you end up getting a 95% yield. And so the magical part is where you engage at the energetic spiritual level rather than just doing the hustle harder physical stuff.
Yeah, and on the hero's journey, I see that as akin to the student meets the teacher or finds the teacher when they're ready. That's the universe meeting you halfway on the journey.
Right. And life is always your best teacher. But if you are not picking up what the universe is throwing down, oftentimes that will manifest itself as an incarnated being that unpacks what's happening in the right way for you. And that's the gift that we all get to give by being authentic. It is we get to communicate what our experience has been like, and then other people, because they have a perfect nervous system, are going to either resonate or not. But the people who resonate with us are on a similar journey, and they will glean wisdom from our own experience, not because we're some magical guru, but because we're authentically articulating what our own process has been and allowing other people who are about to journey into that process to have some insight. And also because we're magical gurus.
We are wizards. We are wizards. It's all magic, baby. Beautiful. And you alluded to the second tweet that I'd love to unpack here today, and what a nice little bridge. So if you'll allow me, quote, for me, the thing that works is getting to a place where my desired vision is so holographic and clear and obvious to me, where I know without a doubt it is possible for me. Then I start speaking it out loud and letting the dots connect. End quote.
Yeah. So this is kind of birthed out of the experience that I've had doing YouTube videos and being on Twitter since Twitter was a thing. I've always just stream of consciousness put my thoughts out into the world, either through my John Ray account or through the Musing Wizard account or through any of the other Anon accounts that I've had. And the reason for that is that language is code, and because we live in a sea of algorithms, one of the best ways to attract your tribe is to accurately put your current experience and feelings out into the world. So when I started in crypto, I started making videos about what I was learning in crypto. When I started learning about metaphysics, I started writing blog posts about what I was learning in metaphysics. I'm always trying to articulate the things that I'm learning wherever I'm at. And what that does is it starts to attract the right people to me. So let's go back to the quote and talk about what is a holographic vision. Well, a holographic vision, what's a hologram? It's basically like this 3D construct of an image. And so a holographic vision is something that it's a vision that you see in your mind when you close your eyes that's so vivid that you can walk around in it. You know, if you read Tesla's autobiography, he talks about how he had such vivid recall of things in his mind that he was poor. He didn't have enough money to buy all of the parts to experiment with the stuff that he wanted to experiment. But because he had holographic vision, he could literally like put things together in his mind and experiment with things just as an energetic template, which is so hilarious because if you look at the Apple Vision Pro, they have the exact same thing now where you can basically put a race car in your living room and take it apart. That's what Tesla was doing in his mind. That's holographic vision. And so he would run all of these tests in this metaphysical space. And then when he was like, oh, I think this will work, then he would use what a little funding he had to recreate it in the physical. Well, that's what we all have access to do once we train our minds to be able to see things vividly. And so you start building out a holographic image, but before you have the mental capability to really see it, you can use a journal to write out all of the details. Who's there with you? What does it look like? What does your day to day look like? When you wake up, how is your day scheduled when you have this thing? What kind of car are you driving in this vision? Who are you dating? Who are your pets? How is your relationship with your parents now? When we talk about a holographic vision, it's understanding the ripple effect of what does this vision mean in every aspect of life. And when you really can get a sense of all of that, how you would walk around in this thing, the natural side effect of that is it's going to inspire emotion within you. And that emotion is part of the process where, like we were talking about earlier, it's the feminine, emotional energy meeting the masculine rule set that allows for birth to happen. And in this case, it would be the birth of the holographic vision. So what we're trying to do when we're conjuring a holographic vision is create that connection between masculine, which is the mental, and feminine, which is the emotional. And then when those two things come together in the right way, we call forth the reality rendering of that thing that we have been conjuring in our mind.
You alluded to, I guess, the relationship between the vision and feeling, like your physiology, and if you get into the work of people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and a few other very what's the word, alternate thinkers in the psycho, what, why can't I say the word?
Just spiritual guru space.
Thank you. Spiritual, psychological
Yeah,
space.
like quantum
These
psychologists.
Yes, thank you. Quantum psychologist is beautiful. They speak about the relationship with the feeling, and that our physiology doesn't know whether or not it actually is tangibly real. And so by associating the feeling with vision, your physiology already builds a relationship with this place in the future where you want to go or where you're being called to go.
That's
And
right.
by having that relationship, you start behaving and orienting yourself in that way unconsciously, let alone consciously.
Right. And for anybody that thinks that that's too woo-woo, go and read the autobiography or the biography of any gold medalist. Because they, more than anyone, when you're having to tune your body in that way, they literally are envisioning themselves going down the ski route, running a perfect route, seeing every blade of the ski in the snow. They run that route visually, and now through projects like Flow Genome, they're actually are these like balls that you can get into that project the perfect route all around you. So you're wearing these VR goggles, and you're literally having the experience of what it feels and looks like to do it perfectly. Because what they've shown, and you can read a great book called The Rise of Superman to learn more about this, is that when you're visualizing the perfect thing, your brain is firing the same electrical impulses to those muscles, so it's not as active because you're not fully engaging the muscle, but the impulse, the channel is still getting opened up just by visualizing it. And so you're preparing your body to do a perfect run. And all Olympic athletes go through this process. Anybody that's the top of their physical game knows that this is in a game of nanoseconds where the difference between first and second prize is less than a second. You must do this to win a gold medal. So extrapolate that out to literally everything in your life, and that becomes a way that you can tangibly have an advantage in all things that you do.
Yeah, I see also the relationship. So I work with a lot of leaders in business, right? And leaders in the sporting field. And I think one of the things that great leaders consistently do is paint that vision, articulate that vision to the group as well as to each individual in the group. And there's a lot of research on this. I think it's the Pygmalion effect, where you might remember a teacher in high school, and the teacher consistently tells, well, me, for example, that I'm not paying attention. I'm speaking out of turn. I'm not present. I'm gonna fail. I'm never gonna get anywhere. And because that is reinforced and that's the messaging I'm getting from this person that I'm supposed to be looking up to or getting guidance from, my behavior manifests. I walk that path. I continue to play that role. And what I see great leaders do, especially at the individual relationship in their teams, is speak the vision to them. Like speak a place or a destination, or how they are the cog in the machine, to be really general about it, and create that destination in which they are able to move toward. And you do that with an individual, like, oh, Sally, I really am excited to have you in this team. These are your strengths, and I think you bring these things to the table. And I see us in a couple of years, you playing this role, and that helps these guys out. To
Right.
couple that with the team's orientation creates a beautiful picture for everyone to orient themselves towards. And I think it's just such a powerful thing for entrepreneurs who are engaging stakeholders or subcontractors, for leaders that are leading teams, and sport as well. You don't want your back pocket in AFL's my game, NFL and baseball or whatever. You don't want your first baser to be worried about catching balls in the backfield. That is just not what, sorry, I'm ignorant to baseball, but that is not what you've got your guy on first base for. You want them to man the mound. Sorry, I should have been prepared with an American analogy.
Australians talking about baseball. I love it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. That's what being a visionary leader is. It's painting the picture. And you know, of course, being a good leader is about verbal communication of that. But even more so, it's about nonverbal communication of that message. There's a telepathic message that you send when you can see it clearly. And so anyone that's ever been in a visionary role or called a visionary recognizes that the things that people say to you are I never saw it as clearly as when I heard you say it. And you go back and listen to the words that you're saying, and it wasn't necessarily overly descriptive. It's that they were tapping into some kind of a telepathic field that you were projecting that allowed their brain to get into coherence with it and actually see it. And the more that you practice it in your own mind, you won't even have to verbalize it because you will exude the template of that reality so vividly that anyone that comes into contact with you is going to be in alignment with it, or they're going to feel uncomfortable around you and go the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where you can start trusting the people around you to perform the how, rather than having to control the how. I see that as such an opportunity. We get so fixated on the how that the what isn't clear. But if the what's clear, the how can manifest beautifully, and you can have faith and trust and courage to let someone operate how they best feel fit to move towards the what. And like you said, or they won't subscribe to the what and they'll opt out, making both of your lives a lot easier.
Right. It's really about surrendering into a higher principle that, of course, this is going to get solved. Of course, the solution already exists. My job is to feel whatever I'm feeling right now. And ultimately, the solution will present itself in perfect timing.
Good way to end that little summary, John. All right, third tweet for today. Quote: An attitude of gratitude is a game changer. I also love to frequently celebrate past wins as a way to call in new ones. End quote. I got sent a little reel this morning by a good friend of mine. It was like just this guy who's walking through the street, and he said, is there someone in your life that is doing really well, who's smashing it, but just doesn't give themselves enough credit? If so, send this reel to them. And I asked him who he sent the reel to. And yeah, this is an opportunity for me, right? Like, again, as we get closer to an ideal moves further away, we compare ourselves to a higher expectation. And celebrating wins is something I am, I guess, actively trying to adopt more consciously, but it isn't an instinct. It's not a habit. I'm so attuned to focusing on the opportunity. And I feel as though I let great opportunities to celebrate just with myself or the people I love or the people I work with slip away. So gratitude is something I've practiced with feeling for a couple of years now, without feeling for a bit longer, and was like, oh, this isn't working. Why doesn't it work when I write? I'm happy that there's trees that I can look at out of my balcony. But obviously the feeling relationship with that's really important. We've already alluded to it. But to celebrate wins, to feel the positive energy of moving towards a place. Tell me how you celebrate wins, John, and sorry, what that tweet meant for you at the time, if you can remember.
Yeah, well, if you're ever frustrated, almost always the prescription is celebrating past wins. Because frustration just means that you're not tuned in to all of the things that you've actually achieved. You're too tuned into the common day or the present day frustrations. And so, in my coaching practice, if somebody is frustrated, sometimes we will take them through a process where we just say, tell me about a big win that you had in the past. So then you detail that in as much detail as possible, and you tell that, and the coach acknowledges that. And then when they're done, you go, that's awesome. Tell me about a similar win, a similar earlier win. And you just go down the rabbit hole of how many times they've won in similar ways, to the point where they literally have a state change, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a winner. I forgot, but I remember it now. And you just feel so excited because it's so fun to tell people and have the space with it where somebody without judgment is ready to listen to, like, the times that you really won. And so, of course, that energy of getting back into the state of a winner is powerful, because emotions are that energy that meets the masculine vision and brings it into reality. It bursts it into reality. Well, what is good prayer? Good prayer is simply being in deep gratitude for the highest ideal. So in a religious context, God represents the most loving being that could exist. And in Christianity, it's this being, Jesus Christ, who literally gave his life for you. So we can decide if we want to believe that or not, and that's a completely different conversation. But if we want to use it as a permission slip to find gratitude, even if we're having just the shittiest life experience ever, it's an excuse for us to be in gratitude about something. And so oftentimes people pray, I want this, I want this. They think God's like their butler in the sky, but really God is more than this. But one way that we can use God is as a mental construct to always have something to be grateful for, to always be able to find that place of gratitude. And in that way, we're able to tune into the larger piece of God, which is not mental. It's more emotional. That, like, the emotional qualities of God are where we really expand. And it's why oftentimes, if you can really get deep into prayer, you'll find yourself crying, because when you really tune into that place of gratitude deeply enough, and you recognize that all of reality was created for you and is responding to you, and that there's this beautiful rule set that you can engage to get whatever you want, like, it becomes this emotional experience that's purging you of anything that's not that perfect relationship. And so prayer is gratitude. Like, the best prayer is hands open. Why do you do that? Your chakras are up, like you're in a receiving mode. You're positioning your entire energetic field to be in reception of a higher frequency. And in that higher frequency reception, you're charging your batteries. You're literally bringing voltage into your body. There's a great group of scientists called the Thunderbolts Project. And they're practicing something called the electric universe. And in the electric universe theory, the vacuum of space is not actually a vacuum of space. It's what Tesla thought it was. It's ether. It's a mechanism for electricity to pass. And each of the planets are basically giant crystals that are conducting energy from these stars. And so everything, and we as humans are basically silicon, bioenergetic nodes in the electric universe. And so our job is to clear our energy systems in a way where we're receiving the highest level frequency that's available to kind of tune the reality algorithm around us. And good prayer is being in appreciation of the perfection of all of that, and just basking in it. And no matter what's happening in your physical externals, that's a permission slip for you to find that place of gratitude regularly, which then becomes a feedback loop, so that you end up attracting experiences where you can then feel more gratitude.
Yeah, if we're truly just nodes. If we play this theory out by being open and able to receive, the electricity or the current can pass through us more freely and at a higher rate, which I guess makes sense from my perspective, that we would then operate uh, in in the most ideal alignment to God or to this electrical theory, because the current is running through us rather than it being blocked or stopped or over intellectualized, and now we're forcing, like we're using the little electricity that we're able to grasp and just try and white knuckle our way towards what we think is right rather than letting it flow through us, hence universal flow. That's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, and in electric universe theory, your muscles are battery packs, and your muscles create these electromagnetics in the body, and your teeth are the circuit breakers of the body. And so energy is literally coming through your head and flowing through the body, but it's flowing through your teeth as the circuit breakers, just like the circuit breaker in your garage does. And so your teeth end up channeling that flow of energy into different parts of your body. And of course, each of those parts of your body has a physical part, like an organ has a physical part, but it also has an energetic frequency. And so the most optimal state to be in is where every single muscle group at the electrical level is receiving full voltage, because that means that the battery is full. Almost always people are operating at an EV negative voltage. Their batteries are less than half full, and that's either because of bad diet or poor exercise habits. Because there's too much mental or emotional stress. And so when you get all of these things in tandem, you're literally raising the voltage of your body, and the voltage of your body is what allows you to do stuff. But more importantly, the satellite dish of your brain, which is capturing the information of the simulation and the field, when it's at full voltage, it's like a satellite dish that has full power. It's able to grasp information from deeper spaces. And ultimately, that's the intuition. That's the gut feeling. It's when those battery packs are fully charged that we're emitting a signal that's then calling back relevant data.
Yeah, and what do those EV negative states manifest? Clenched jaw, stiff shoulders, all of these again blockages to get away from the woo woo
Right. Or
theory
just like a
potentially.
short trigger.
Yes,
Like
yes.
in my bad degen days of my 20s, when I had to go to court ordered anger management,
Tell me,
like they
sorry to cut you off. What, I am not privy to the dark corners of the interwebs. What's degen?
it stands for like degenerate. So in
Oh, right,
crypto,
right. Yeah, yeah.
in crypto and gambling, we lovingly call each other
Oh,
degenerates or
that's
or
so
or
nice. Yeah,
degens
yeah.
to
Degen's a bit
to
nicer.
to acknowledge our degenerate willingness to go all in at any moment in time.
Me and my friends just use all of the syllables. We just say filthy degenerate. But yeah, degen.
Yes.
Degen's a bit nicer. Yeah, sorry to
And,
cut you
and
off.
and so when you're forced, especially into something like anger management, you go in there begrudgingly, like I did when I was like 21 years old. And so you're hearing all of this stuff that comes up, and the first thing that they teach you is, well, when you're really angry and frustrated, you need to count to 10. And you just want to punch that person in the face, because you're like, you're so stupid. And then in that moment, a good teacher, which I had a great one, will be like, you're very right to feel that way. Now count to 10. And
Yeah.
by the time you get to 10, you're like, GD, I'm not even mad anymore.
Motherfucker.
And it's because you're building out space, because when you're angry, you tense all of your muscles and you're literally squeezing energy out of it. It's like a leaky battery when you're frustrated, when you're in those lower base level emotions, all your batteries are leaking energy, and so you're losing voltage, and then that makes you even more frustrating just by counting to 10, because your natural state is for voltage to rise. So just by counting to 10, your voltage starts to go back up, and it gives you intellectual, emotional, physical, and spiritual space to actually respond versus reacting.
I'd like to go back to prayer really quickly. And for those, I sorry, just to digress for a little bit, I did one of these ipsative psychometric tests in my early 20s, part of a career, and it sort of measured my character in a lot of different categories. And it was a scale from 0 to 100, and my skepticism rating was 97. And I imagine there would be some skeptics listening to this and some people that might consider themselves atheist, or when we do get a little bit woo woo or metaphysical or quite out there, they might switch off. But prayer, I personally prayed a little bit when I was younger. My grandparents are Christian. My mum wasn't an active practicer in the space, but I would go to God, or what I thought God was at the time, when I was a bit stressed or anxious or scared. And but for the majority of my life, prayer wasn't even on the radar. I put it in the same box as I did with most religion, outside of the philosophical lessons that I could glean intellectually. And I now know that isn't the goal. But if you to run an experiment, to use your language, John, it's all a game. We run experiments. Prayer has been an amazing experiment for me over the last few months. I felt called to pray with just some sickness in the family, without going into too much detail, and to feel in prayer, to couple it with my meditation, to pray before I sit and find stillness, and to just to project energy in whatever way feels intuitive to me. Most of the time in prayer, it's been just lovingly positive gratitude. Like, thank you for the challenge. I pray you help my family and myself find discernment and joy and fulfillment and love in these challenging times, etc. And to feel that, even if it's going to nowhere, even if it's just all woo woo BS, right? That processing of emotion has been so powerful for me before I find stillness. And
Mm.
I strongly encourage one, even the biggest skeptics in the world that think God is akin to the flying spaghetti monster, to run that experiment. Just run it for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
Well, and there's always layers to your prayer game, and what is prayer? Well, it's giving you some sense of relief, because even in something that maybe you have zero control over, by praying, it kind of makes you feel like you have some control over it, right? And so it provides you with a sense of
That's
relief.
true.
So we could argue whether that's a placebo effect or not. As an entrepreneur, a lot of times I'll have a problem in my business, and oftentimes when I have a problem in my business, I go and scroll Instagram because I'm looking for ads that will solve my problem, because the algorithms know me so well.
So it's a
And
conscious scroll.
and
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And so then I'll click through to something that might solve my problem. Maybe it's a course or something. I'll buy the course. And then a lot of times I'll never do the course, but I'll feel so good that I just solved my problem, that then the actual solution comes in. And so it wasn't necessarily the course, it was the course as a permission slip for me to feel a sense of relief that, oh, thank God I solved that and I can move on. Well, prayer is that. The first level of prayer is just intellectual relief. It's the same thing that meditation does, and in many ways they're akin to one another. Where prayer at its most basic level is just allowing yourself to have a little bit of space so that you release some of the stress around something. And when you release stress, your voltage starts to go up, you're in more alignment, and so the actual solution can flow in. And then you can say, oh, that was God. And maybe it was, or maybe it was just that you reduced the importance on it, and the importance, the stress that you had about it not working out. And in that reduction of stress, it allowed the solution to flow in. Now, the deeper level of prayer is, and this is more like religious prayer, or like really wanting to develop a relationship with something that you're experimenting with as God, like as a loving entity. And my experience with that deeper level of prayer is that it's a much more emotional experience. It's not just reduction of stress, it's literally overwhelming of emotions. And they, in Christianity, this is called being wrapped in the Holy Spirit, and in Eastern religions, it's called samadhi. It's when you're having an experience that you did not just trigger by reducing your stress. it is literally an emotional reaction that's bringing tears to your eyes. And that's the next level of prayer. And there's likely other levels. I haven't experienced them yet, but my sense is that the more that you can live in that state of receiving that divine love at an emotional level, the more that you deepen that connection and the more that you can just live in that and walk around in that. And when you see these spiritual avatars that people travel across the world to be because there's something emotional about just sitting with them, those are people that I think have just blown that connection with the divine wholly open.
I was getting a little bit emotional, to be honest, just thinking
Yeah.
about some of the recent times I've sat and yeah, completely resonate with the visceral emotional connection to even I don't know what box I have God in at the moment, to be honest, but yeah, to intellectualize it, the totality of all ideals or the universe or the unexplainable, intangible reality of the connection between all of us conscious beings and the universe and the natural surroundings that exist. And yeah, it's powerful. I encourage
Yeah.
people to run the experiment.
And for people who can't get to that place or they've tried to get to that place and it's like God isn't talking to you, stop drinking coffee and stop doing drugs and alcohol and then try to get to that place because your nervous system is likely totally overtaxed by those things. And I've noticed in my own prayer life, if I'm too caffeinated, it's very difficult to get to that place because these are poisons that we're putting in our body. And even though we've made them socially acceptable, they're still poison. It's still not natural. And so if you really want to find that emotional connection with something higher, I would go on a fast. Like it's one of the reasons that spiritual fasts are an interesting thing because you're reducing all of the poisons that you're putting in your body, whether that be processed foods, whether it be white sugar, whether it be fluoride, all of these things that we don't even realize we're intaking into our body every single day that are poisons. Well, doing a 3 day or a 7 day, or if you're really looking for an interesting experience, a 12-day fast, these can be very interesting ways to really get you into your raw emotional state. And that's where God communicates with you.
Great advice. Yeah, yeah, I've definitely noticed as so I don't I did a 3 month sobriety at the end of last year. I've now carried that into this year. I don't drink at all anymore. And yeah, again, whether it's a placebo or just a coincidence, it makes sense to me that it isn't those things. But for me to be with my feelings and feel my feelings and be more open and like I think I mentioned to you off podcast, I was watching this show called Dave. It's by the Jewish rapper Little Dicky, and it surprised me that you know him. I thought everyone knew this man, but oh, what a great show! And I found myself so emotional in bits of this series, and I was one a year ago that never teared up, never cried. It was something that I pushed away or repressed or ran away from. And there's beauty in sadness. There's beauty in vulnerability. Like that's what love is, you know. I think there's this great Simon Sinek quote that love is giving someone the power to destroy you, but trusting that they won't.
Mm,
And I, man, beautiful, bro. Beautiful.
yeah. It's great. And you do have to go to a vulnerable place and not drinking caffeine if you've had a cup of coffee every day of your entire life, like that's a vulnerable place and it's why it puts you in such an emotional place and you're likely going to have to feel through some frustration. Anybody that's ever stopped smoking knows what I'm talking about. Like you have to really count to 10 when you stop smoking so that you don't punch a hole in something because all of those emotions that the nicotine has been pushing down start to rise to the surface and you realize, oh, there's a whole flood of stuff that I should have been feeling that I wasn't. I was suppressing it with these substances. And so there's a temporary season of discomfort that you go through while all of that comes up and you feel like a freaking hot mess. But on the other side of that is the authentic you, is you aligned with who you actually want to be. And you're going to have some clear picturing of all of the choices that you've been making from a place of inauthenticity to yourself. And unfortunately, that's just part of the awakening process. People call it the dark night of the soul. Well, the dark night of the soul, what is it? It's not that God is trying to punish you. It's that you haven't been in connection with God or that highest love available. You haven't been in connection with your authentic self. So you have potentially a lifetime of choices that you've made from someone that's not you. And once you really get down into your emotions and you're not suppressing them anymore, you realize that, and then you're forced to either be miserable or to make new choices.
Well, yeah, with all change, there's the resistance and the chaos first. At the macro and the micro, in internally, externally, there is always the storm before the calm, and on the other side of the storm is growth, as long as integration occurs. Uh, yeah, beautifully said. We might go one more, John. One more for today,
Let's do it.
if you'll allow me. And I think this is a beautiful one to unpack, especially for the culture that I see on X anyway, the young hustlers that are white knuckling their way to riches and putting their hopes and dreams in $1 million. So let's dive into this. Quote, "Don't measure too quickly. Notice the new desire or preference that the current circumstances are inspiring. Build out the clarity of that new preference, then simply follow your creative impulses." End quote.
Yeah. Well, the best way to understand that is to think about times when you've gone to the gym and started to build muscle or started to lose weight. When you go to the gym the first time and you haven't been in a long time and you do any type of workout, you're going to be so sore the next day. It's going to feel so uncomfortable. You're not going to want to go back. And then you're going to stand on the scale and maybe your weight went up. That's such a frustrating experience. And that's an example of measuring too soon, because of course you're taking the right actions. Of course you're doing the right things, but there's a gestation process. You wouldn't find out that you're pregnant and then a month in be like, well, I haven't had the baby yet, so I guess there's no baby here. Like you recognize that there's a 9-month gestation process and that these things happen in seasons. And so if you're measuring too early, you're not allowing the season to play itself out. You're not allowing that gestation process to happen. And so you just have to recognize that in that gestation period, life is going to trigger you and it's going to help you move any blockages that you have in your energy emotion systems that will feel temporarily uncomfortable, and you will likely have some big feelings around some of those things. But if you will non-judgmentally allow yourself to just notice the sensation in your body, allow that to pass, allow it to escape as heat, like you're drinking a cup of tea or a glass of red wine, and just feel it kind of expand back into creative potential in your field, you'll slowly start to have the spiritual Drano in the pipes clear out your nervous system so that you can actually manage the energy flow of a larger experience. And so what is that? That's the baby growing. That's part of the gestation period. That's the voltage going up. And so if you measure too quickly, if you're three weeks into your sales program and you're reaching out to people and you're making your 70 calls a day and you're marking them off in your CRM and you haven't sold anything yet after 3 weeks, and then you just decide, I'm a terrible salesperson. Well, no. Every salesperson knows that you just keep calling people, and eventually some of those 300 people that you called in the first days will come back around and be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I've been meaning to get back to you. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Like every salesperson has that breakthrough experience. And so extrapolate that out to all experiences. All experiences have that process where time just plays a factor. And if you're measuring too quickly before time has had the ability to connect dots for you, then one, you're clenching your energy, and so you're lowering your voltage as you're clenching your energy because you're squeezing the energy out of your electromagnetic muscles. So your voltage is low, which means that you're not sending out as strong a signal, which is mean it means people aren't reading you as a visionary, which means they're not in tune with your vision, which means you're attracting people that are misaligned for you, which means that you're having frustrating experiences. You want to get the voltage up. You do that by feeling your feelings. You do that by being in a state of gratitude. You do that by seeing the holographic vision of what you want to walk around in. And as that voltage goes up, now you're sending out the signal of being a visionary. Now every person that you call, even if they're not ready to buy, is like, "Hey, I really enjoyed the conversation." You're building relationships with people, and to continue the sales analogy, that ultimately nets in you 60 days later being the top salesperson. And it's so crazy how when you put these principles into practice in a sales game, you can go from being the worst salesperson in your organization to the best within a 60-day period. Easy. Because sales is all about energetic connections. That's all a relationship is. And when you have tight energy, when you know that vision, when your voltage is high, and when you're seen as a visionary, people want to buy stuff from you.
Amen. You're painting that picture. You're creating that what clearly that one can align to, not only intellectually but energetically. And yeah, I see also if we use the sales analogy, if we measure too quickly, we're now focusing on the measurement. So our intent is wrong. So
Yeah.
even at just a very pragmatic level, we're focusing on the wrong thing, and
Right.
therefore we're chasing the wrong thing. We're
Right.
behaving in alignment to the wrong thing.
Right.
And
Let's
yeah.
go back to something you don't know anything about, American baseball.
Hey,
If you're in the
hey,
eighth inning,
I know the Yanks. The Yankees are the New Yorkie Yankees. Yeah.
if you're in the eighth inning and you're down by 3 runs and you just keep thinking about the fact that you're down by 3 runs, and if you don't make those runs up in the next inning, the game's going to be over. Then all of your energy is going towards something that you don't have any control over. If instead you say, okay, so we need 3 runs. I know how to do 3 runs. We get 2 people on base, and then I hit a home run. I can see the fans screaming at how intensely activated they are at the fact that we pulled this off and now we're the champions. And I can see the news interviewing me and calling me the MVP. Like you get your voltage up, and then you hit the home run.
And then
You don't
all you
think
have to do
about
is
the
hit
fact
the
that you're
ball.
losing because you're
Yeah.
not losing. The game isn't over.
Yeah, beautifully said. I love that. I love the relationship between the ideal, the visualization, and then it boiling down to, oh, well, all I need to do is what I do 1,400 times every Tuesday night at training is just hit that ball. Then that's
Exactly.
again focusing on, I just need to pick up the phone and call that next person. And yeah, again, having the courage and faith and trusting the process that by doing the reps, you'll not only get better at the reps, you'll not only be able to flex those muscles better, but you'll be able to, as you work in the system, understand the system, notice patterns, understand the game you're playing, get
Yes, and
feedback
and
from the
one
market.
modification to that. Put in the
Yeah.
reps, but put in the mental and emotional reps too, because there's a big difference between just doing the hustle harder work and doing the visionary work. You need to be a visionary before you do the reps, because those reps are going to net greater yield if you've been the visionary first. And the visionary is not just a mental state. It's not just being able to see it. It's getting your voltage up. It's feeling it. Like hopefully, as I was talking about that baseball experience, you could feel my voltage going up. Like I thought I was going to hit a home run. I don't even play baseball. And so that's what you want to do for yourself in all situations. And if we want to circle all the way back to this conversation, it's why celebrating your wins is so important. Because what is it when you tell a friend about this awesome thing that happened to you, what happens? Your voltage goes up. Your emotional state is more powerful. And that's when you can create what you want to create. That's when putting the reps in are going to have a 10x multiplier on it.
Yeah, beautifully. And thank you for clarifying that. Again, it's the what before the how. The how manifests perfectly as the what becomes clear. John, I would like to do at least one more of these. There's some other beautifully articulated tweets that I'm sure we can dive into and learn some more about. But for today, some key takeouts for me. I think I can always learn more about the masculine and the feminine and our relationship with what those things are. And I believe in today's day and age, it's really easy, as we put so many things in a box, to put femininity and masculinity in boxes and think we understand them. So I really appreciate your unpacking of the mother and the father, the mental and the emotion, the relationship between them together. I thought was beautiful. I love that quote. I wrote it down. I'm going to repeat it. A ship in motion is easier to turn. You know, a ship in motion is easier to turn. If you don't have the what, the walking towards whatever the what is will make the what more clear.
That's
But
right.
if you can be there, if you can see it, whatever you can see, that creates a lot of alignment, especially in the things that you are trying to bring into reality, especially as you can articulate that with the cogs in your machine.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, a couple of key takeouts for me. Electric Universe series quite interesting. I really enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to doing a bit more reading on that. But John, absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation. If people really want to dive into polarity in the masculine and feminine, because we all have a mix and match of masculine and feminine energy, and so I think a really interesting entry point is The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, especially as it relates to actual romantic relationships. And what are romantic relationships? Well, oftentimes they culminate in the creation of a human, and so by studying how we interact in romantic relationships and the fruits of those relationships, we can really learn a lot about how we can engage all relationships with all things using the same energy. Cool.
Beautifully
We'll
said.
see y'all later. Leave a comment on anything that you have questions about, anything that stuck out. Follow on Twitter, twitter.com/musingwizard, and we'll see y'all in the next one.